front end of our web page. And to do that, we will start with the navbar. So instead of plain text routes, we will actually create a fancy navbar, if you might say. We'll go back to the Preline UI library and maybe select this simple navbar right here. We obviously make sure that we're not going to copy the dark classes to make the components a little bit clearer. We'll just hit copy, go back to our navbar, and we paste this code right here. Then we're going to make some adjustments. So we'll remove the SVG class and we add maybe a span with our maybe logo, which is the name of this application, Go Cards. And maybe we will adjust the text size to be maybe base and the font to be bold. And simply we will remove the current href and just basically use the index or slash, obviously removing this area label as well, and add the @click.prevent to prevent the AJAX request by this event and fire this event instead, which is load content, our function to load the content from the backend, and we would load the content inside the homepage. So whenever the user click the cards logo, it will direct him to the homepage. So after we created our logo, we will copy one of these anchor tags, paste it right behind our logo. This would be the dashboard, and we can remove then all of this code. Right, we can remove all of that until the div here. And right here we have our anchor tag for the dashboard. So we will adjust, of course, its styles and maybe the text as well to make it dashboard. Now this will have the ref of dashboard and it will have a changeable or dynamic styling based on the current routes. Of course, we would also implement the @click.prevent and we would give it the actual load content function. Now, if we hit save and go back to our application, hit the refresh button, we can see that we have a Go Cards and dashboard. Now, the dashboard is not really styled very well. To adjust the styling, maybe we need to create another div for the justify between to work properly. All right, we hit save. Refresh. Maybe we'll also make this div to take the full width of its parent. Now we can route between our pages in this simple components. We can maybe also give it some by, for example. So now we can also adjust the styling of the dashboard to maybe add some styling with the xbind class right here. So if the route is equal to the dashboard route, then we're going to show the border gray. So the border of this dashboard button would be gray, and then the text as well gray 800, which means a little bit of shade of black. And the border will be transparent if it's not the case. We can also make the font to be bold if the dashboard is selected. So we can now refresh the page. We can check if we're inside the Go Cards, the homepage is showing. But when we click the dashboard, we can see that it's becoming bold and also has this border below it. We can do the same thing for our Go Cards. So we can add another binded class here, and we can say, for example, if the route is equal to the index of homepage or the route of homepage, then we will go ahead and make the font bold. If not, then we're doing nothing. The font would be basic. So here, the font would not be bold. Remove this class from here. We hit save. And now if we refresh the page, we can see if we're inside the dashboard, we can see this line. If we're inside the Go Cards would be bold. Maybe we could remove also the border just to make it the same style. So we'll remove the border from here and from here. We can simply also remove the border from here. All these classes of border. Now we can switch between our routes, our pages from the Go Cards, which is the homepage, to the dashboard. Okay, awesome. To create our front end for the homepage, I'm going to use simple components. For example, we need a hero component that will show a text here. And we will also need some grid to show our cards that we're going to fetch from our database. Okay, so we go back to our Preline examples, and here we go ahead and find some hero section to fit inside our application, and we will use this one. Okay, we make sure that we are not copying the dark classes since we're not going to use them, and we copy this HTML right here. Inside our web page, we're going to paste that HTML right away, and we could probably also you know, have them inside a div and maybe give this div some styling, but we're just gonna, for the sake of this video, we're just gonna paste it right away here. We will make some adjustments right here to change, for example, the announcement banner. We would remove the announcement banner. We will change the title, for example, and we'd also change the text here. And for the buttons, maybe we'll change this to be a sign-in button. So we'll say just simply sign in, and we would remove this SVG here because it's the GitHub SVG from here. After that, we can maybe hit save, go back to our application, refresh, and we can see the hero right here. So after we created our hero or implemented our hero section, so after the hero section in our homepage, we will create the cards section to display our cards fetched from the database. And to do that, we will find some block components to display our cards. For example, here, block sections, we go to the last section. You could, you know, select whatever component you would like. I would copy this one, paste it right behind the hero right here, and we will make some adjustment to the cards you know, section. First, we will change the block to the cards, and maybe here we would just say, you know, some text. Now we will copy one card from these cards, for example this one, and create it as a separate component. So with the temple keyword, we create a card and we give it this code, right, this HTML code. Then we're going to remove all the other cards. So we select these cards until the button here of read more. We remove them. We can see that we're missing a div for the actual grid. And here inside the grid, we're going to use a for loop via Alpine.js. And to do that, we will use the template tag. So the template tag is a placeholder tag that will be replaced with its content after the HTML is loaded on the browser. So we can use the x4 to make a loop inside this and maybe render a piece of content for an X amount of times. For example, for X in 10, we would then render our card coming from the component cards, and we can render it this way. This is a temple syntax. We will render this card. We'll adjust the card a bit to remove, for example, the image, since we're not going to use any image, and we'll remove the image from the section of the author. Right now, if we hit save and refresh our homepage, we can see that we are implementing the cards, currently showing 10 cards with the current style. I'm going to also implement the front end for the dashboard, which will be simply just the cards section and maybe another component to display the user. And this would be as like maybe a task for you. You would implement it yourself. I'm not going to show the code using the same components, and I just edit the hero and make it a little bit different. Going back to our homepage, here I want to edit the cards and make them ready to actually display the actual data from our database. So what I want to do, the edits that I'm going to do to the card, I want to make the actual title in the middle and only show the title before the user hover the card. And whenever the user hover the card, I want to show the other content of that card. So we will start with our component of the card that we took from the blog section from Preline UI library. And we will start by changing the anchor tag to a div. So a simple div, because this is not an anchor tag or a link that takes the user anywhere. Okay. We will remove the href, and we're also going to give the component an aspect ratio, meaning the component or the card will always have an aspect ratio of 3:4, so it doesn't show up as a square. Next, I will remove this class from the div, and we will add the X data for our card. So the data needed here is a variable that will detect if the mouse is hovering the card or not. And we will use that with verbose to conditionally display content from inside of the card. So we will start by creating the variable called verbose and make it equal to false. And then we will follow up by adding our event listener to the mouse movement. And there are multiple event listeners you can use with the mouse, and I will use mouse enter. This event listener will listen to the mouse entering the component, and it will, evaluate JS expression inside these double quoted string. And the JS expression would be to make the verbose variable here, to make it true. So simply make it true. And we will add another event listener to the mouse leaving the component, so mouse leave. And we will have the JS expression to make the verbose variable false. Okay. Next is to conditionally render these components or this content. Now I'm gonna change the content to make it easier to navigate. So content, title, and here would be the author. Okay. I will add a class to the parent div of our content. So here, and I'll give it a class of h_full, so it takes the full width or height of our parent component here, and it will be a flex layout. The items will be center, and the justify will be center to center the content inside of this div. Then we're going to add the title and the content right here. So we're gonna copy this from here or cut this from here and actually insert them inside the other div. This div would be only shown whenever the verbose is false, and we will add the title. So whenever our component is not hovered yet, it only shows the title, and whenever it's hovered, it will show the title, the content, and the author. And to do that, we'll use the same xShow that we used for our component here. The xShow here would be not on the main component or the main div, but actually inside the title itself. Now we can save and refresh our page to see the changes. And exactly, we found out that the cards now are not square, first of all. And the second change is that the title is in the middle of the card. And whenever we hover, we can see the full content of that card, as you can see. But the style of the content of the card is not correctly rendered. So we remove the whole class from here. And we hit save again and refresh the page. Now we can see that our content is correctly shown, but not inside or not centered in the component. And the reason is because we're using this class right here on this div and not the actual, parent div of these. Either use the same class here from here. We can use the same class inside this div to make it center the content inside of it. And just like that, but we need to also add, flex column, for example. And now we probably see the content showing inside or in the center of the div. We actually also need to remove this div and have it inside the main div of our content. So right here, this will ensure us having two conditionally rendered tags. So the title and then the actual content behind the main div. And we might need to get rid of this class because we won't need this styling on this div. Now if we hit save and refresh our page, see the title, and whenever we hover, we should see the content in the correct layout. Now we would also need to probably center the text. So to do that, you simply just go ahead in the main component right here, and we add the class text center. It will center our text in the middle of each card. Okay, awesome. So next would be to fetch the actual content from the database and show them inside the cards.